It's a good thought, isn't it? Okay, today uh, we're going to look into the book of Genesis. We continue our series on God moments, and Mike, the title will still be the same, God moments. But I want to today. I want to talk to you about on the thought of marks of the moment. Marks of the moment. Now, you get old, you get marks, and for me, usually, if everybody looks at their arm, if I have, you think that's funny, do you? But for me, if I can usually tell when I hit something, if there's going to be a mark, and this poor little elbow, this bone on this elbow gets a lot of stuff, and pretty much I can tell. Well, give me about 5 minutes. So we're going to talk a little bit about marks of the moment. Now, let me bring this in line. Marks of the moment is an implication of something that happens in your God moment. So, this is for the end of the service, but everyone will have a God moment. It may be different in measure and in impact, and it really depends on the individual of how they respond when God is doing something. Not everyone will receive it. So we do have a choice. Now, let's go to Genesis chapter 32, and we're going to look beginning at verse 22. Genesis chapter 32, verse 22. And we're talking about Jacob. Here's what it says in verse 22. And he arose that night and took his 2 wives, his 2 female servants, and his 11 sons, and crossed over the ford at Jabbok. He took them, sent them over the brook, and sent over what he had. Verse 24. Then Jacob was left alone. A man wrestled with him until the breaking of day. And now when he saw that he did not prevail against him, he touched the socket of his hip, and the socket of Jacob's hip was out of joint as he wrestled with him. And he said, Let me go, for the day breaks. But he said, which was Jacob, I will not let you go unless you bless me. So he said to him, What is your name? As if he didn't know. But the response Jacob gave was, he said, Jacob. And he said, the angel, Your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, for you have struggled with God, with man, and with men, and have prevailed. Now, that's something you need to get in your heart and keep it, keep it right there with you. You have struggled with God and with men and have prevailed. And then Jacob asked, Tell me your name, I pray. And he said, Why is it that you ask about my name? And he blessed him. So Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, for I have seen. Now you begin to understand. He knows who he's dealing with. Jacob says, For I have seen God face to face, and my life is preserved. And we'll get back to that in a moment. And just as he crossed over Peniel, the sun rose on him, and he limped on his hip. Therefore, to this day, the children of Israel do not eat the muscle of the shank which is on the hip socket, because he touched the socket of Jacob's hip, in the muscle that shrank. So Jacob asked this man, he said, "What is your name?" And the response was, "Why do you want to know?" But as you notice later on, Jacob realized who he was dealing with. He was dealing with the angel of the Lord. Now, we're talking about marks of a moment. When God has intervened, interrupted your life. When I use the term marks, it doesn't have to be a physical mark, but with Jacob it was. For the rest of his life, he would limp on his hip. Does that mean that his hip was out of place the rest of his life? It doesn't tell us. Maybe, maybe not. But the point was, that was a reminder. That was a mark of a God moment. And I believe this. I believe that you and I have marks, whether they are physical or they're mental, definitely they will be spiritual, of God moments. Now, sometimes this for Jacob, as it was for Moses and others that we'll deal with, was a life-changing moment. And I believe there are those that are here today and those that are watching, that you've had life-changing moments. I remember the cousin that was, that's a pastor now, but he was running from God. And he ended up in, at that time, St. John's Hospital with his knee all messed up from a motorcycle accident. He had been running from God for years. And he had promised God when he was in Germany in the army, his term was, "If you'll get me out of this God-forsaken place, I'll serve you." That was a God moment to a degree. But God brought him home. And after 3 car accidents, and now a motorcycle accident that's landed him in the hospital, he has a God moment. And in that hospital room, he said, "God, I'm through running. I'm going to give myself to you." And he did. A God moment. But that knee will never be the same. Now, was it God's fault he had a motorcycle accident? No, but that was an opportunity, that was a circumstance, a situation, and a time that left a mark of his God moment. Sometimes events lead us to this moment. And think about in your life, has there been an event that has led you to a place where there was a God moment? Maybe it's a tragedy. We've all, everyone in this room and everyone that is watching has experienced some kind of tragedy in their life. Whether it was the loss of someone you love, or your home, or a job, or I could go on, but you understand what I'm saying. It was a tragedy. Everyone in this room and watching today has had difficult times that have led them to desperation. Desperation brought me back to the old rugged cross. Desperation brought me back to Jesus Christ. You see, He didn't leave me, I left Him. Interesting, isn't it? Life-changing moment. That interruption in your life. And you may have been like I was, and when God, the first time I really remember this interruption in my life, where it was a God moment. I was mad. I was mad at God because I didn't want to hear and I didn't want to think about what He was saying and showing me. Because that was what I was trying to get away from. God moments. Everyone's going to have them, and they are life-changing moments. Things, here's what you got to get. It's things that get us to a place where we're open to God. Think about Jacob. He, as you read in chapter 31, 32 now, even chapter 30, you realize that he had had a situation with his father-in-law. And his father-in-law is behind him, and ahead of him is this brother that he has cheated, Esau. He's in a situation. Now, if you really study the life of Jacob, Jacob wasn't that much different than a lot of us. But things happen. Listen, I cannot tell you why you are going through what you're going through today. But I can tell you something. There's a God moment that's in your future. And maybe what you're going through right now is to get you opened to a place where God can show up. We don't like that. We don't want to think, well, we're just not where God can really deal with us. Sometimes we're not open. Sometimes we're not open. Sometimes we have our agenda, our plans. It's amazing. Oh, Lord, I pray you'd honor my plans. Maybe we should pray, Lord, help me to honor your plans for my life. Because He said, I have a plan for you. He didn't say, you have a plan for me. We go through times in our lives where we try to manipulate God and get God to do what we want Him to do. And it's reversed. It should be, Lord, help me to do what you want me to do. So sometimes we're just not open. And I want to tell you, from experience, it's easier if we're open to God than having to be brought to that place where we become open to Him. Are you still out there? And the angel of the Lord that appeared to Moses in the burning bush. Oh, come on now. I believe he appears to Jacob in this place, in his desperation. And he showed up because that was God's plan. Now, let's go a little bit farther. Are you still out there? God moments, marks of the moment. What a story this is. It's a story of change